Welcome, ladies and gentlemen mathematicians. I am going to give you a little tutorial on how to set up some graphing, and we'll see if you have any questions. Go ahead and put those in the comments or contact me directly. Alright, so obviously we have the calculator on. This is our on button down here on the very bottom on the very left. So let's talk about how we plot data in a graph. There's a couple of things here. It's a y equals, and then we have a window, we have a zoom, we have a trace, and we have graph. Now each one of these has its use as far as graphing. I'm going to start with two of the most basic functions. I'm going to say y equals x, and then I'm going to have the next one be y equals x squared. Alright, we've got that. Oops. This needs to be squared. Alright, so I've got these two, and I'm going to go ahead and just click on graph. Now there's our first one, and there's our second one. If you weren't sure which one was which, or you want something that's a little clearer as to which one is which, there's a way to do that, and this is actually kind of cool. Not many people know about this, so I'm going to take the moment to just show you. You can go over using your arrow keys, and now you've got the line flashing. Go ahead and hit enter, and it will give you a different line. Now I've got a really heavy line here, and then I'm going to have a really light line here, so it's going to be really clear which one is which. So this can be helpful if you've got a couple of things going on and you're not sure, or you want to be clear on which one it is. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to graph that again. So there's my line that's really heavy duty, and there is my parabola that is right through our origin. Okay, so what happens if you have something other than a very small or very close to the origin kind of numbers? This is set up for a 10 by 10, and I can show you that here. If you have the window, you can see negative 10, positive 10. We have a scale of 1, so there's a little tick mark for each one. Y is negative 10 to 10, and then again the scale is 1. There's a little tick mark for each. Now if I have something where I say let's say plus 9, plus 9, and I'm going to go ahead and graph it again. Now yes, this, you can still kind of see it, but you're kind of like missing this whole other piece, right? So if I wanted to, I could change the parameters of my window, and this takes a little bit of thinking about. You need to think about whether you want it on your X or Y, or both, and you need to keep track of which one is which. So let's go ahead and take a look at doing that. In our window, my X values seem to be fine. Alright, I was fine with those. What I do want to do is I want to make my Y max to be 20. I'm going to move my number of space or number of units above the X axis. I'm going to increase that, and I'm going to increase it by 10. Now I want to point out something here. In this case, right, here we have this negative 10, right? People want to put in the upper value and the lower value in that order. This has it the other way around. This is the lower value, and then this next one is the upper value. Alright, so I've put in 20 for this, and you'll be able to see here in just a moment. But it becomes really important to keep track of which one's which, because this will give you an error if you put them in the wrong order. That's actually one of the fastest ones to go correct, but it's helpful to have knowledge of which one is which and what you need to do there. So I'm going to go ahead and click Graph. So now that's a lot clearer. Again, I have my parabola. My line goes almost completely across. You know, I don't really lose a whole bunch. So this was useful to be able to change my y-axis to be able to see the rest of this line. Now what happens if your y-intercept is, say, 19? Let's do 29 actually. And then we're going to go Graph. And so now this line is way up over here, and our intercept is somewhere up here, right? I mean, if we had a screen that was big enough, it would be somewhere up here. So setting your window up properly is going to be crucial to being able to view what's going on the graph. The other thing I'd like to point out is on our y values, our tick marks are much closer together now. If I were to bump this up to 40, in fact I'll do that. Let's bump this up to 40. Seems like it's faster doing the clicks on the actual machine as opposed to using my computer to make that information go. Alright, so there I've got it moved up to 40. You can hardly see that there's anything, you can't really tell where the tick marks are. It's like really smushed together. So what I'm going to suggest is that we go in and we're going to change how often our Y scale shows up. This time around, now we've got 50. From -10 to 40, that's 50. So how about we do scale of 5? I'm going to pick 5 instead of 1. And you can do that. I mean, you can change the scale of these things as long as you're consistent. I mean, that's the deal with graphs. They have to be consistent all the way across or all the way up and down. You can't jump numbers in between, but you can alter, you know, that each one of these is 5 and each one of these is 1 still. All right, and as you can see, by doing that, we've made it so that it's easy to spot those tick marks again. So that's one of the things that you are going to find helpful, I think. All right, so one of the things I want to show you is our zoom. And you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can make it a square, you can go back to the standard. You can set up a trig function. Yeah, a zoom stat and zoom fit. So zoom stat, I'm going to mention this one when you're doing graphs in the stat function, and we'll talk about this again in a different video, but I want to just make certain. Sometimes you will have this on, and you'll have a line, and they will be at odds with each other. So you're going to need to make sure that the zoom stat or the stat plot are off. That having been said, let's go up. I'm going to zoom in just a tiny bit. All right, so let's zoom. So enter, and then enter. See, now it's at 0. I've got my y equals 15. We don't want that. I mean, that's so far smushed together we can't see anything. So let's zoom back out. And we do that by going to the zoom button. And then enter. And then enter a second time. So you've got to hit it twice in order for it to actually do it. All right, so that having all been said, you can trace and figure out where things cross, right? And this is really helpful, particularly when you're not sure when they're crossing or it's not easy to figure out where they cross, particularly if they're trying to go, you're going through 2 or more functions. So what you can do is you can move along the line. You can trace along the line. And as you see, I'm moving to the left, right? I'm approaching this intersection. One more maybe. Okay. And now I want to check and see what's happening at the same place on my other function. Well, I can zoom in here, which would be fine, but there's an easier way. And that is to switch between function 1 and function 2. So there we go. We can see negative 4.89 for my x and then 23.9 for our y value. So let's go ahead and I'm going to switch back. So our x stayed the same. Our y is a little off. All right. So let's take a look at, there's one more thing that we can do. Like I said, we can zoom in. There's one other way that's really, really useful. And I'm going to suggest you kind of like, don't use this one all the time, but do be aware that it's there and do use it when you need to. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to do second, and then I'm going to go to the trace. But if you see above that, there's calc. We're actually going to calculate the intersection. We're going to have the calculator do it for us. It should be really easy. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to go second, and we go calc. And we want to figure out our intersection. Now you can figure out a whole bunch of things. You can figure out value, you can figure out the 0, where does it cross the x-axis. You can find the minimum, you can find the maximum. That's really good for if you have quadratics or something that has a lot of bends and curves in it. It's really easy to spot those. And so we're going to actually go with the stuff down here. I wouldn't worry about. That's calculus, right? But 5 is going to be our intersection. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click 5. And now it's asking, is this the first curve? And the answer is yes. So we go ahead and hit enter. And is the next one the second curve? Now, if you had more than 2 curves going on, but you only were interested in finding out where the 2 curves intersected, this would be what you would use. All right. So here we have the second. And then we're going to guess. Well, this is a pretty close guess. You don't have to guess. You know, I mean, I figure we pay for batteries, so if we want to use our batteries, we're allowed to. So there we go. So our intersection, they are giving us exactly the intersection. We were close, but not exact before. This is the exact answer. All right. I will mention if it goes negative 4.99999 forever, that really is a 5, right? It would be a negative 5. Just be aware of that as well. All right, I see that this is getting a little long. I'm going to pause it, and we will come back to graphing if we need to. All right?